Good evening. I'm glad you're with us tonight here on PBS Fort Wayne. Our show is Life Ahead. I'm the host, Sandy Thomson, but the real stars are sitting over here, and I'll introduce you to them in just a moment. We're going to have a nice discussion tonight about reducing mistakes that you potentially might make in planning for retirement. And I have some experts in the field that will give you some guidance. And I also want to remind you, if you have not watched before, this is really your show. So if you have questions, give us a call. You see the phone number down there on the bottom of the screen, and you can just dial that number anytime here in the next half hour, and we'll direct your questions to our panel this evening. Okay, let's get ready to introduce and to meet our guest this evening. First of all, you know her if you've watched Life Ahead before, because she's been on many times, and that's Janell Sprinkle. Nice to have you back always.
Thank you for having me. I love it.
Oh, good. Oh, good. Janell, by the way, is an attorney specializing in elder law, and she has brought with her tonight Josh Millard. Josh is a financial planner, and he was just saying that he's just kind of really busy right now with things about estate planning and taxes and all kinds of issues like that.
Yeah, it's always crazy this time of year with these kinds of questions.
Why is it busier this time of the year, Josh?
It just seems like people are kind of thinking about this stuff come spring, and thinking about a lot of people are thinking, well, maybe I don't want to go to work now that the weather's nice. Maybe what would it look like if I didn't have to go to work tomorrow? And so that causes a lot of questions on, can I retire, or should I retire, or what would it look like if I retired?
Those are some of the things I want to ask you, because I think you all think about it. It's like, when can you retire? Josh, how do you counsel clients when they come to you and say, do I have enough money saved to retire yet?
Yeah, and that question can be a little bit more difficult than it seems like it should be, because you think about everybody lives completely different when they're working. Some people live on higher income or lower income, or do more things, and it's the same in retirement. And it's really a relationship to how much money you're going to need to spend in retirement. What does your budget look like, and your outgoing versus your incoming, how much income you're going to have, and how much assets you have saved up to be able to provide that amount of income.
Is there a formula? I mean, would you say, figure how much you spend a year now, and then say, okay, that's how much I'll need a year when I retire?
Yes and no, because some expenses drop off when you retire, like you stop paying FICA tax, because you pay the federal income tax for Medicare and Social Security on your working income. Well, you don't need that anymore in retirement. You also don't need to fund your 401k, because you're going to start withdrawing out of your 401k instead. So a lot of times a good rule of thumb is about 70 to 80% of your current income in retirement, just because some of those expenses drop off.
Well, I heard people say, professional people say, we spend the first half of our life acquiring, and the last half of our life getting rid of things. So maybe by the time you retire, you just don't have a need to spend a lot of money. You aren't caught up with, like, I want a new car, or let's get a bigger house. You might begin to decline some of those areas. Is that the case?
Sometimes, but then people always have their dream list. Like, I would like to do more traveling, or we'd like to take the kids on vacation, different things, or I want to buy that RV, or we'd like a vacation home. And so some expenses do fall off, but some expenses pick up.
Yeah, depending on what your wish list is for when you retire. Okay, Janell, how can an elder law attorney help with a retirement? If I say I've decided I want to retire next year, and I came to you, what would you help me with, or what things do I need to bring to you to help you guide me?
So an elder law attorney's role in retirement is just to make sure that you have the documents you need to protect you while you're living and as you age.
Yeah.
And then also to make sure that the assets that you've worked hard for, and that a financial planner has helped you save and accrue, are passed efficiently and with the best tax application to your heirs.
Okay, all right. Now, I know you always guide us to make sure we have the usual documents, which are power of attorney.
You got it. You know this. You've heard this before.
I listen to you.
So yeah, the most important are the ones that protect you while you're living. So those documents are your power of attorney and your healthcare power of appointment, so that someone can help you with transactions or with medical decisions if you need them to. And then the other one is, of course, your will or a trust or somehow to exercise your right to put your funds wherever you want to after you pass away.
Speaking of funds, and Josh, you know this, a lot of times for different assets that you might have, you name a beneficiary.
Yeah.
And here's my question. A lot of people think that if they're a beneficiary, that when somebody passes, they get that money right away. True or false, and why?
Well, yeah, it varies a lot depending on what type of an asset it is. So if you're a beneficiary in your will, that time frame would look a lot different than if you're a beneficiary of an IRA or of a life insurance policy. Those are much quicker, but they still do take some time, because what happens is if you are the beneficiary, you call out to that company that has the asset and provide a death certificate. They send you a packet of paper. You tell them how you want it deposited, or if it's an IRA, do you want to roll it over? Do you want to cash it out? So there are a lot of decisions to make on your end, but then you provide the paperwork back to them and they send you a check. So it takes a while, but it's fairly efficient way.
Is it the more complicated a person's estate is, the longer it might take? I mean, say they own some property that you're going to have to sell, that RV Josh wants to buy, you know, some things you want to get rid of. So maybe there's a time period for that.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, and it depends whether we're going through probate or not. So a lot of people, when they come to me, that's another conversation we have, is one of your goals, do you want to avoid probate?
Yeah.
Probate is just the process of going through the court to get the assets transferred. So, but then the court will set time limits as far as leaving your probate estate open for creditors and publishing in the newspaper. So if you have a probate estate, it will necessarily kind of extend the time frame.
Got it. We have a question already from one of our viewers, and thank you for guiding Larry here. Larry called and he says, I have inherited an IRA from a deceased parent. Do I need to continue taking the minimum disbursements, or what is the best method? That's a legal question.
Yeah. And I can answer for Larry. That's a great question. So, if your deceased loved one was taking RMDs, required minimum distributions, before they passed, then yes, you are required to continue taking those RMDs. There's also a provision that you have to take all of the asset within 10 years. So you can take a little bit out each year, you can take all of it in the first year, all of it in the 10th year, but by the end of that 10th year, you have to have all of it pulled out. Those were some new IRA laws that went into effect a few years ago.
Okay, all right, thanks. Yeah, Josh.
One caveat to that is if that person deceased pre-2020, then the 10-year rule would not apply, and you would be able to stretch that out longer than 10 years.
Josh is right. So the new rules that came in in 2020. I guess I presumed, Larry, that this was a recent death, but Josh is absolutely right. If it was before 2020, then instead of that 10-year time frame, you can actually stretch it for your entire life.
Oh, all right, good to know. Larry, thank you so much for watching us here on Life Ahead, and thanks for calling in with your question. We'll wait for the rest of you to call here. You still have plenty of time in this next half hour. Okay, let's go back to you, Josh. We talked about how you know or what helps you decide when you have enough money to retire. What are some common mistakes that you found through your client work through the years that people make in this planning?
Probably the biggest mistake I see people make is not planning for the taxes. So many people, the lion's share of the money they've saved is in tax deferred accounts like your 401k or your 403b, traditional IRAs. So you've chosen all these years to not pay the taxes and kick that can down the road and pay the taxes later. well, later's coming, and you're eventually going to have to pay those taxes.
Yeah.
And not planning for that tax is probably the biggest mistake I see people make. The other mistake I see people make is not planning for inflation.
Oh, inflation, always an issue.
Right.
So do you have to plan assuming we'll have an inflation?
Yeah, you have to assume you have inflation, because you think about, a lot of people are going to be retired 20 plus years, and
Yeah.
you think about what things cost you 20 years ago versus what they cost now. And unfortunately, what we've seen lately is inflation even going faster than what we've seen 20 years ago. So you have to plan for inflation. A lot of times I hear folks say, well, I want to do a whole bunch the first 10 years of retirement, and I want this big budget, and I know later in retirement I'm going to do less, so I need less income in retirement, which is kind of true, but you also have to understand, 10, 20 years from now, the less you're going to do is going to cost more because of inflation.
Right.
So you can't just say, oh, I need less income, and therefore I can plan on that, but you have to account for inflation in there, and then obviously the taxes.
Is there a percentage, or if you're thinking of counting in for inflation, how do you calculate that, or assumption do you make? Yeah,
you really have to assume somewhere between 3 and 4% a year inflation.
Really?
Yeah, and really because the last couple of years we've seen 5, 6, even 7% inflation.
Right.
And now it's slowing back down, but you really have to plan for at least 3% inflation, if not 4.
For each year of your retirement.
Yes.
And we don't know how long that retirement's going to be, because we don't know how long we're going to live.
And then some things, unfortunately, inflate even faster, which are the things that are going to affect us most as we get older. Healthcare inflates more. Healthcare probably inflates at 5, 6% per year. Right, and then even what like actual care, when you get to the age that you need care from somebody, that inflates even faster than that. So some of those big expenses inflate even faster than what we anticipate, say groceries and gas, to inflate.
It's the hardest thing to make decisions about, again, because you don't know how long you're going to live after you retire, so you have a hard time deciding when you have enough money. We have another question. This is from Betty. Betty, are you on the line with us here? Maybe not. No. Okay. All right. Betty left her phone call with us here in the control room, so I'll ask that of our panel this evening. Betty says, do all wills have to go through probate?
Yeah, and Betty, that's a great question, because I know sometimes there's a misconception that if you have a will, you're avoiding probate. So, but to answer your direct question, no, not every will has to go through probate. It is dependent upon what your assets are and how much your assets are. So in Indiana, and sometimes this number changes, but in 2025, if your assets are over $100,000, that is the threshold of when we need to probate your estate. So anything under that, we do not have to probate. That was a great question.
Okay, yeah, thank you, Betty, so much for watching us and for calling in this evening. Okay, Janelle, let's go back to another legal question. Long-term care, a lot of people begin to consider as they age.
Yes.
Actually, if I'm correct from guidance you guys have given us before, the older you get, the more it's going to cost than if you bought a policy in younger years. Do you have is there a standard or a recommendation here?
So I think you're talking about the long-term care insurance.
Insurance, yes.
Yes, and that is true. And I think Josh can probably talk to the insurance part. But to answer your question, really that's one of the things that we do talk to clients about as an elder law attorney is figuring out the best way to structure your assets to pay for long-term care. Of course, you can always private pay by just paying whatever the rate is of the facility, or we can talk about private paying with some supplements like the long-term care insurance, or I think you and I have talked about before, veterans benefits is another way to supplement that cost. And then of course, I know we've talked about this before, Medicaid. That is another way to apply for a state benefit to help supplement the cost of that long-term care. So we have conversations, what are your assets and how best to structure you for long-term care. And then Josh, I don't know if you wanted to weigh in on the insurance, but that is another way to help pay for that.
All right, Josh, you get to weigh in on this.
Yeah, long-term care insurance is obviously something that is a great way to pay for long-term care expenses. Unfortunately, it's fairly expensive to buy. And the other unfortunate part is that it can be difficult to qualify for.
Oh, really?
Yeah, because obviously the insurance company doesn't want unhealthy people, because they want people, the insurance company wants people that probably aren't going to go to the nursing home. They want to weed out the unhealthy people and bring in the healthy people. So it can be hard to qualify for. So the key with long-term care insurance is to get it when you're a little bit younger, maybe in your mid-50s is kind of the sweet spot for that, while you're still healthy. And then, figure out ways to pay for it. One of the other keys is, fitting that into your retirement budget. If you get a policy that you have to pay for forever, that can be a big expense in your retirement budget. So you can plan for that and do what's called a 10-pay, where you pay
10-pay?
10-pay.
Okay.
Where
What's
you
that?
only pay for it for 10 years and then it's paid in full, and you
okay.
don't have to pay the premiums forever. So if you do that, say 55, and you retire at 65, then you don't have to fit that in your retirement budget.
Okay, but you're still covered by that policy.
You're covered, yeah, it's fully paid for, and you're covered, and you don't have to worry about them raising the rates on you, and you don't have to worry about paying that premium forever. It's paid for. You retire, it's paid for, you're done, you're ready to move on and be retired.
Should we pay attention to commercials that we see a lot from insurance companies about everybody's covered, there's no medical qualification? What does that mean?
Well,
Or what are they really
that's
doing?
a lot of times you're thinking about like these final expense life insurance policies is what they're talking about there. And that a lot of times that's what's called a graded life insurance policy, which means that you pay the premium and you have life insurance, but you really don't have the full value of the life insurance until you've paid so many premiums.
Yeah.
Like 2 or 3 or 5 years worth of premiums, then you got the full death benefit. But up until then, they'll essentially, if you were to pass, they would give you all of your premiums back plus interest.
Oh, okay.
That's how they can give you a guaranteed policy with no health questions.
Okay, all right. What about Medicaid? And both of you can jump in here on that. How do you qualify for Medicaid, and how does that help you as you move into your retirement period? Janell, let's start with you.
Sure. Well, Medicaid is a state-run benefits program that if you ever needed long-term care, the state would help pay for some of that cost. So if you're in...
Like a nursing home or home health care?
Yeah, so
That too?
it would, there are Medicaid benefits that apply if you want to age in your home, the home health care. There's Medicaid benefits if assisted living facility is the best care plan for you. And there's also Medicaid benefits in a nursing home situation. So the benefits look different in each of those three, but to kind of pick the middle one, for an example, an assisted living facility may be anywhere from $3,500 a month to $8,500 a month, depending on your level of care. If you are eligible for the Medicaid, if you apply and you're found eligible, then Indiana caps your room rate depending on the year. This year's rate is $967. So it's significantly less than you would have to pay if it was a private pay rate of $35 to
They cap the amount that you
how
can
much
spend on a nursing home?
how much your room and board would be per month. They lower that to $967 for 2025. That's what you would pay per month if you were receiving a Medicaid and an assisted living facility. So rather than paying the full private pay rate, you would pay that reduced amount per month.
Does every nursing home or assisted living accept that?
No, not all of them do, and you can call and ask and see if they accept Medicaid. And sometimes facilities will have so many beds within the facility that do accept Medicaid, and some that are private pay only.
But you can find that out again. Would a website tell that?
Every facility has their own rules on that, and so we have one in our firm that kind of lists all the firms and whether they accept or not. But you can also find that by calling if there's a couple of facilities that you're interested in, and call them and ask them directly.
Do people, Josh, sometimes are not aware of benefits they might have with Medicaid, or as Janell mentioned earlier, VA benefits, which can be wonderful and a lot of things you can get, but are there people that don't claim those?
Yeah, unfortunately, like a lot of government benefits, they're difficult to understand.
Yeah.
And people don't know if they qualify. The VA benefits are kind of strict as to what years of service you would be in to qualify for that. The Medicaid benefits have a lot of financial rules to them of what assets you're allowed to have and still qualify and what assets you're not allowed to have. And there's lots of things that can actually be done with planning is you can move things around in order to qualify for Medicaid. And that's really what Janell specializes in is working with folks and helping with that.
Okay. All right. Let's talk a little bit about beneficiaries. Again, we touched on it earlier. Say you have a lot of different assets in your estate planning that you have acquired or put money into. Can you have different beneficiaries for each one, or do you have to use the same people?
Oh, sure. You can have different beneficiaries on each and every one. And so when we're talking about your estate plan, we're kind of looking at your goals as a whole.
Yes.
And so sometimes it's better, a lot of people will match their beneficiaries to their will or to their trust, and you don't necessarily have to do that. So sometimes if I'm speaking with someone and they have charitable intent, I say, well, it might be a really great idea. Instead of having a gift through your will, you could use your IRA beneficiary to give your charitable donation, because a charity doesn't have to pay income tax on that. So anyone else, if it's a traditional IRA, when they pull that money out as a beneficiary, they have to pay income tax on it, just like someone would during their life.
Which Josh mentioned some people don't think about.
Well, you're exactly right. Yes, exactly what Josh was talking about. So, that's just an example. So in a situation where you would have a charitable intent, you might have your IRA beneficiary, certain percentage of it going to your favorite charity and have the rest of it going to your family. Or I have some people who set aside an account just for their grandkids. And so that account has all the beneficiaries of the grandkids, and they feel good about doing it that way. So there's a lot of ways that we can structure your beneficiaries to attain your estate goals, but it really is something you want to think about as a big picture and not just as an individual asset, because you can get yourself kind of in trouble if your estate plan doesn't sync with those beneficiary forms.
Okay, let's say your will and your beneficiaries do not correspond. Which takes precedence?
That is a great question. Yes. So a beneficiaried asset actually goes around your will. It goes around probate. So whatever amount is in that asset, it goes to the beneficiaries. So sometimes when people are trying to avoid probate, they have directed all of their assets through beneficiaries, forgetting that their will over here is not going to be funded. So that gift to X, Y, and Z may not happen because you've beneficiaried it all around that. Another reason why you really want to think of your estate plan as a whole and think through how exactly you want, what your end goals are.
What happens if that money's all gone to beneficiaries? What happens?
Yeah, well, your will doesn't get funded, so those individuals don't get the wishes that you wanted them to have. Yeah.
Well, that's just the way it is. So another reason why you need to be thinking about these things. Financial advisors, Josh, how do they counsel people that, if clients come to you and say, okay, I haven't thought about it before, but I'm getting close to thinking about retirement, how do you counsel them what they need to do first, second, whatever?
Well, first you got to figure out, A, what have you saved?
Yeah.
Where is it at? What's the tax consequences of it? B, what's your income needs in retirement? And then figure out how you're going to supply those income needs, because pretty much everybody's going to get Social Security. Yeah. And for most Americans, that's going to cover about 40% of their income needs. So they've got to figure out, how are they going to fund the other 60%? Is it going to be, do they have another pension? Do they have to figure out how to take withdrawals out of their savings for retirement, how to create that income? And that's the biggest key for most people trying to get retired, is how do they fund their monthly budget out of the money that they've saved?
Okay, all right, good advice. We just have about a minute left to go, Janelle, but I'd like for you to give to our viewers your thoughts of the most important things they need to do to avoid mistakes here in their planning for retirement.
And I guess I wanted just to continue with the last question that you asked, because I was thinking about how beneficiary forms interact with retirement. And really, when you're working with a financial planner and you've set a great plan for your retirement, sometimes assets have been consolidated, or we've rolled over a work 401k into an IRA, and your assets have changed. So that's really, once you have everything set up and all of your big mistakes taken care of and worked out, then that is a great time to come see your attorney, because there are a lot of those beneficiaries that have changed and you want to make sure those are all updated. So it really takes a good team of someone looking at your finances and someone looking at your estate plan and working together to get the best package and plan for you.
Well, you two have just done what our intent is here on PBS, and that is to give people information and education to help you with your decisions and choices you have to make in your life ahead. Thank you, Janelle. Thank you, Josh, for being here.
Thank you for having us.
And we'll be back again here next week at 7:30 on Wednesday night. See you then.
The preceding program on PBS Fort Wayne was made possible in part by...
When I got a call saying my water bill was past due, all I could think about was, oh no, my plant babies. The guy told me I had to go make a payment at a crypto ATM in town.
Recognize fraud sooner with AARP, so your money lives longer.
Crypto ATM.
Beers Mallers, elder law attorneys, providing information on legal matters of guardianship and financial issues relating to nursing home care. Beers Mallers attorneys can also assist with Medicaid requirements and help navigate difficult family situations. Beers Mallers, attorneys at law, with offices in Fort Wayne, LaGrange, and on the web at beersmallers.com.